Morning, George. This is George Cottle, is that right?
That's right.
George Cottle from Onside Law. George's aspirations is becoming a professional footballer. I think preferably for your favoured team, West Ham, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, they
Sadly
may not
so,
have
yeah.
come to fruition, but his love of sports is very much part of his everyday work at Onside Law. Onside Law work globally. I think I'm right in saying with some of the biggest sports, including England Rugby, World Rugby, LTA, European Tour, ECB, and also rights holders like Sky and BT. You're an associate specializing in dispute resolution and regulatory matters, which sounds very complicated, for clients in the sports and media sectors. Just quickly, just go into a little bit about your kind of move from school, university into business with your passion for sport. It was always a big thing for you, sport at school and uni. Did you know from an early age that what you wanted to do and make it part of your career?
To be honest, I'm not sure I wanted. I knew I wanted it to be part of my career. I was, as you alluded to, I had dreams of being a professional footballer and ideally for West Ham, but that obviously didn't materialise for one reason or another. I knew sport, would be an integral part of my life. Recreationally, playing, watching. But from an early age, I'm not sure I did necessarily know that I wanted to go, into the business of sport, and I suppose there were some reasons for that. The sort of careers department of my school didn't sort of say, you can go and do this in sports business or that. So it wasn't really clear to me it was a definite option until a bit later on, I would say.
Okay, and from school you went to uni, studied politics and economics, so kind of heading down a bit of a more financial path, I guess there.
Yeah, exactly. Those were the two subjects I enjoyed most at A level, and so it sort of made sense to carry those on at university. The degree I did at university was a 4-year course, which included sort of a year in industry between my second and final year, and that was, as you say, very much down the sort of financial route. And that was the course I was on until until after uni 2015, basically.
Which uni were you at?
University of Bath.
Okay, and what business did you do in that third year gap year, or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I worked in the finance department at Goldman Sachs. So I was in investment banking, and I quickly realised that probably wasn't for me, for one reason or another. And so it was almost, when I graduated in 2015, it was a little bit back to the drawing board, and have a think about what I wanted to do. And that's when I sort of looked into a career in law.
Okay, I mean, I guess it's as good as anything in that year to work out what you don't want to do as much as what you want to do, I suppose.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. It was it was good experience, and exactly as you say, you know what you don't want to do.
And having decided that, or thought that maybe law was the route you wanted to follow, what was your next step from there?
Well, I should sort of say I had considered law, not sport, but law at in sixth form, going on to study at university maybe, but I was steered away from that by my teachers who sort of said it's better to study another subject at undergraduate level, and then because you can always do what's known as the law conversion, which is open to anyone. Lots of people study, for example, history or English or politics and economics like I did, then they do the law conversion. So it was sort of in the back of my mind, and then in 2015, when I sort of thought about it a bit more deeply, the first step was to try and get some work experience. So I did 1 week at a sort of a quite big global law firm, and then a week at a smaller high street firm, just to see what it was like, whether I thought I suited it, whether I liked it.
And you did, obviously, you took to it. And so how did you finally get on with in Onside Law?
So after that work experience, I then started the law conversion, as I mentioned. That's a 2-year process, so quite long-winded. After you studied for 3 or 4 years, I then completed that, undertook a training contract. So you're a trainee solicitor effectively for 2 years at a law firm. A law firm will give you a training contract, and then you're not qualified as a solicitor until the end of that. So I trained at a firm called Mishcon de Rea, based in London, and then I left on qualification and joined Onside. That was about coming up to 2 years ago now.
Okay, so in total 4 years at uni. So you're coming out at 22. You do a couple of years in training and qualifying.
So if you don't study law like I did, there's the postgraduate law conversion, which is a 2-year period.
Yeah.
And then once you finish that, there's the 2-year training period at a law firm. So you are an employee of a law firm at that stage. It's a paid role, but
Yeah.
you're not a qualified solicitor until sort of after that. So as I say, it's pretty long-winded. And I mean, and then you're off. Then you're a qualified solicitor, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite a long, as you say, a long process. That's kind of 8 years from leaving school, but you've got to get the qualifications, right? You've got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to persevere, but I think with any sort of career, it's the case, isn't it? It doesn't happen overnight. And I think it's a good qualification to have. It's a good investment, I think, in time and all the rest of it.
My son's working like a dog trying to qualify to be an accountant, so I know I feel your pain. I feel your pain. And so, what does Onside Law do? Give us a little bit of a window into what they do and what they specialise in.
Sure. So it's a leading boutique firm that specialises in providing sports and some media advice to clients. Most of those clients operate in the sports field. And they, as you mentioned some of them earlier, they range from sports governing bodies like the ECB, rights holders like Sky and BT, clubs, teams. Sometimes we advise individuals and athletes. And yeah, that's it in a nutshell, basically.
Brilliant. And you in particular, what do you work on?
So as you mentioned, I'm in the disputes team. But the firm and most law firms are broadly split, across 3 different departments. You have corporate, commercial, and disputes. Now, the corporate and commercial side of the work is all transactional. So that's sort of making deals. That's very sort of seen as like a positive thing. And examples of that would be, advising a club on entering into a sponsorship agreement with Adidas for the shirt, for the kit, or a front of shirt sponsor. Now I work in the disputes team, and that's sort of we come into the picture when sort of relationships break down or they threaten to do so.
Right.
And we advise clients on those aspects. So again, it might be basic example would be if a party under a contract fails to pay the other party for what it's due under the contract, we step in. Another example might be, and I'm sure people would have seen something close to my heart, being a West Ham fan, that the Kurt Zouma cat kicking incident, which was over the press. So you get these sorts of things quite a lot in sport due to the high profile nature. We would, it's a question of disrepute. Has he brought his sponsors into disrepute? And in that case, Adidas found he did, so he lost his deal with Adidas, for example. That's another sort of classic work we would do.
It's sort of fascinating because bringing sport into it makes it a whole heap more relevant and kind of day to day and obvious, if you like.
Exactly. I mean, there's household names, so it's all very tangible and very relatable, I think.
And so I'm guessing you come across some quite exciting cases. Without giving too much away, give us a clue as to some of the more exciting or weird bits of business you've come across.
Yeah, I mean, I have to bite my tongue somewhat, but there's some of it's out there. The interesting stuff I can think of, top of my head, we advised Eden Hazard on his move to Real Madrid,
right?
Which was pretty big, particularly if you love sport. We advised the ECB on their sort of creation and setup of the 100. The new the new ball format came out a couple of years ago. We advised private equity funds in investment in the All Blacks and the Hurricanes, which is a big franchise over there in New Zealand. I mean, it's great. There's some really high profile things. As you mentioned.
And I'm guessing that kind of ticks the sports box as far as you're concerned, from a kind of cerebral point of view, or just interest point of view.
Yeah, definitely it does. I mean, it's still law, and it can be dense, and sometimes it's technically difficult. But I think, and this applies to any sort of area you work in law, you have to have a good understanding of your clients' needs and commercial drivers and all the rest of it. You have to understand the business of sport and the club or the sport itself. So I think that combination, I would say, does tick the boxes.
Yeah.
There's also some good perks, of course. You get to go to,
I'm sure,
events, matches, all the rest of it. So that scratches an itch.
I'm sure. So you're trying to make West Ham a very big client, presumably.
They're already a client. So
they're already a client.
Yeah. So I'm lucky in that sense that I get to
Okay, so aside from law and obviously playing for West Ham, what if someone's at school, university, they're interested in sport? What
Yeah.
other kind of career paths would you recommend they might look at?
Yeah. Well, I think first, sports is a massive industry. It's global. There's so many opportunities. So apart from being a sports lawyer, there's sports marketing. You can work at sports agencies, advertising, sports journalism is another one. I think now what you're seeing increasingly, sport is becoming more and more data driven. So sports science and sports, tech, I would say, is really exploding. And another thing which I must admit I haven't fully got my head around is esports, which has sort of come into the market in the last few years. As I said, very much, I'm sure the audience, the students that will watch this will know far more about it than I do, because it's sort of that younger generation, isn't it, coming through, and that's growing massively.
Brilliant. And we all set up on careers, and we do badly, well, medium, whatever. If you were to start again, you would have made some mistakes. If you were to start again, what advice would you give a younger George in terms of getting into law?
That's a good question. I think I would say, take. I sort of heard this advice when I was going into sports, so I was already in sort of law. But what I did then was sort of dedicate a set amount of time each day or each week. It doesn't have to be a lot. 30 minutes can be whatever. Just set it aside. Be quite strict with it, just to further your understanding or put yourself out there. So that might involve contributing to an online blog, reading articles, and I'm not talking about dense case law or anything like that. Can just most newspapers cover this sort of information, commercial, business law. So doing that. Don't be afraid to network. Do as much of that as you can. That can be, you can include that in the 30 minutes, and that's come on so much now with LinkedIn. It's so easy to connect with people and get yourself out there. I would also say if you choose to apply to work at a law firm, or in fact it's generic advice, you can apply it across the board. Take your time to sort of research the company and the people there, and I think that's important for two reasons. It will come across in your application or your approach that you've sort of done it on a scattergun approach if you haven't taken that time. And also, if you're successful even in doing that, you might shoot yourself in the foot, because you might end up at a firm that doesn't suit you culturally, doesn't do the work that you thought it would, or you want to work in. So those are the two sort of bits of advice I would say.
Brilliant. Well, look, I'm really chuffed you've taken the time to chat to us. It's really, people leaving school or even mid-university. I mean, I'm 57. I haven't got a clue what I want to do still, really. But it's a real minefield, and this sort of information I think is invaluable. So thanks so much for your time, George.
And
we'll speak soon.
Great. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.